Hello, and welcome back to the Curious Coaches Lemonade Stand with yours truly, your host, Dr. Gena. So glad that you decided to stop by today. If you are visiting the Curious Coaches Lemonade Stand for the first time, welcome. We're so happy to have you. This is your virtual neighborhood community spot where you can drop by and where we always sip, squeeze, and savor with style. Because if there's anything we can guarantee in life, it's that we're all going to be thrown a whole bunch of lemons. So, why not perfect our recipes for lemonade? Maybe even some spicy margarita is what I always say. So, welcome. And if you're coming back, thank you so much for returning. Really appreciate you taking the time to drop in and drop by. And as always, hoping to offer you something that will give you a little bit of a quenching of your thirst. Maybe some insights, maybe some inspo, something to take you through your day, your evening, your night, whatever point and place you're at with a little bit more pep in your step. Because, hey, life is short. Why not savor? So, as always, we start with a coaching topic. Excuse me. I know that I've been doing a lot more interviews recently, and there are so many more that I want to do because there's just so many super interesting people and so many super interesting topics and conversations to open up with them. And yet, I do still relish the opportunity to be, one to all with you and share a little bit of insight. So, today's coaching topic that's been top of mind for me because it comes up so often, I'd actually say it's one of the fundamental threads of what coaching is truly about in terms of what people are looking to accomplish, even if they don't quite realize it's what they're looking to accomplish. So, what do I mean by this? Well, a lot of times when I'm onboarding clients, so having their first coaching session, and oftentimes that is their very, very first coaching session ever with a professional coach of any kind. So, people who have never experienced, career coaching, life coaching, any of that. When we sit down together and start to really talk about what our engagement is going to look like, what kind of opportunities it can afford them, excuse me, I always ask them, what is going to be a measure of success for you? At the end of you and I working together, me coaching, you clienting, you doing lots of work on your personal growth and development, me supporting you and, helping guide, but never driving because my clients always drive the agenda. What is going to show me, they always ask, that there is success? I ask them, but they often ask me as well. And, the easy coach-like thing to do is to turn that around and say, well, again, what is it that's going to determine that this has been successful for you? Because your success is my success in this engagement. And yet, some will poke and prod further, but Gina, like, tell me really, like, what do you think would be successful? And even if you were to generalize with any client, what do you think demonstrates that coaching has been worthwhile and a valuable undertaking of time and energy? And to that, I think what I would answer from my perspective most demonstrates positive growth and shows that it's going to be really sustainable for people to carry on, long after our coaching engagement has ended. I'd say my number one most common response to this would be that clients can once again trust themselves. And I say once again because I think in everyone's life, there's a point, no matter how old or young you are, what your life background or experience has been, there's been at least scenes, glimmers, instances where you have trusted yourself. What did that look like? And even more importantly, how did that feel? And what's important about trusting yourself? What could trusting yourself more or trusting yourself more consistently or across different kinds of situations and circumstances in life? What could that actually bring for you? What advantages does that confer? And I think that's a big, big, big arena to really explore. And it really is going to be hugely different from client to client what that success looks like. So, trusting yourself. I've got tons of examples. Tons. I'm thinking of clients that I've recently talked to, even some older ones from farther in the past. And I can think of how much corporate trauma, for example, can be attached to trusting yourself or not trusting yourself. Oftentimes, there's a betrayal that's involved in corporate trauma. I know I definitely have experienced this. It could be feeling betrayed by a leader, could be something as, straightforward and simple as you were promised a promotion that never manifested. It could be that you are the leader and you felt betrayed by an employee who maybe, threw you under the bus, sold you out to another leader or a leader more senior to yourself. There's so many different ways that this can, has, does play out on a daily basis. And all of these things are not limited to the corporate world either. My goodness, does this ever happen in public institutions? Probably more so in my client's experience. So lots of different ways can play out in school, whether you're an elementary student or finishing your graduate work in university. This just it happens all over the place. So that idea of betrayal, that idea that you trusted someone or even something, or perhaps an institution, a set of ideals and values, circumstances, and that somehow those fell short of your expectations, or you were downright, tricked, lied to, manipulated, all of these rough words that generate trauma that, I work through clients with, and oftentimes it requires, even in my own personal case, the, cooperation of a therapist as well, or some kind of counselor. I always say, ain't no shame in this game. If you want to be a great coach, you got to have a great coach. Right? And if you want to be able to adeptly recognize the signs of someone that may perhaps benefit from other modalities being used in combination concurrently with coaching, whether that's therapy, counseling, any other kind of mental health support. Yeah, I think we owe it to ourselves and to our clients to know that and to recognize that, especially when it's the person in the mirror. So a lot of these things need to be unpacked and worked through. And as you do so, there's lots of different feelings, things that are going to come up. What I find is at the heart of so much of this, at the end of the day, when you've unpacked what's been done to you, the injustices, the unfairness, just the downright hurt and disappointment and frustration, it ends up being that people often feel like they can't trust. And it starts with, I can't trust my employer. I can't trust my employee. I can't trust this institution. I can't trust this government, whatever it may be. And that's a tough nut to crack. That's something that could take many, many sessions to dive deeper and fully explore. And yet, the deeper and deeper we go, eventually, I find we hit a place of, I don't trust myself, or I can't trust myself. I'm not sure if I can trust myself in this particular arena anymore. And again, I've got lots of client experience around this and lots as a person with personal experiences and frustrations around this too. I think of people who talk about being, betrayed by a trusted friend in the workplace, maybe not in the workplace. I know one person who got their friend hired at a workplace, one client, and that friend eventually got them fired to make themselves look better and help themselves climb that corporate ladder. True story. I've coached, actually, a really interesting one was a lawyer who was sharing that there isn't a day that goes by that she doesn't think about a person she fired many years ago in a role about 2 jobs ago because she truly, truly liked that person, considered them an honest to goodness friend, and yet recognized they weren't in the right job for them and they were not doing the job or themselves justice by being in that role. And even though she shared with me that that person left and, within a couple months was on her feet, this person that she fired, who was a friend, and not only on her feet, but, did find the right career trajectory for herself to truly thrive and has thrived since then. in, beautiful and amazing ways, and often calls her back to thank her for releasing her from that role that really wasn't for her, even though she was obviously, understandably pissed off about it at the time. That lawyer who fired her says she still thinks about it every single day. As I said, 2 jobs many years later. And when she thinks about it, she says, you know, in our coaching, we dug into, well, what do you think about it? What is it that keeps it on your mind? And there's still a level of guilt, even though, from her own observances, from a LinkedIn profile, from what her friend who she fired actually shares with her, she's doing better than she ever did or ever would have had she stayed in that role. She still carries that guilt. She still carries, at the heart of it, an issue with trusting herself and her judgments. Now, I didn't get to coach her um, as long as I would have liked to. I'll say that because I would have liked to dig a little further and find out what is it that is keeping her in that guilt, even though she's very proud of who this woman has become and how she's done it. What keeps it there? Because there's a lot of things. And as a coach, I'm never going to make assumptions. I'm going to ask lots of questions. But you and I, if we were to sit here and make some assumptions, could it be ego? Could it be just the icky feeling of having to fire someone? And that's a sticky thing. And that's something that if you are in senior leadership, in any kind of senior leadership role anywhere, if you're in a nonprofit, if you're in a school board, if you're in the corporate world, if you're in a private club, if you have to make a decision to exit somebody and actually carry through on that, it's a tough thing to do. And I coach a lot of people around how to live with that decision, how to make that decision, how to deliver that decision. It's rough. And obviously, I'm not trying to say it's not as rough, if not way rougher, for the person who's actually being dismissed. Just acknowledging it's not easy on any side, and that lack of trust, imagine how that can happen for both people in an equation like that, the person who's doing the dismissing and the dismissed. How many questions do you have about how you can trust yourself, how you can trust your own skills, how you can trust your sense of judgment? I picked the wrong job for me. I shouldn't have done that, says the person who's dismissed. I overstepped. I knew I shouldn't have even applied to this. I can't believe they hired me, and clearly it was way beyond, my realm, my scope of abilities. These kinds of thoughts, left unchecked, can become thought patterns, can become behaviors, can actually just calcify and become a false foundation of how we operate in the world, how we see ourselves, and in turn, how we see others, how we see or not see opportunities, or see or not see them as being for us, as things that we can choose and that we can handle. So, this is why I come back to this issue of trust and how important it really is. In personal life, imagine, even how much deeper that goes. I experienced and I'm sure it's a very common experience, a breakup with a very close friend group. And we were a clique. We were really, really tight. And there are lots of reasons, in the rear view 2020 hindsight mirror, of how and why that friendship broke up. At the time that it happened, this is many years ago now, it was one of the most painful things I'd ever experienced. I'm blessed, lucky, however you'd have it, to have actually, very romantic and cheesily married my first love. So for me, if you ask what's your experience of heartbreak, aside from, the grief and death of losing loved ones, it was losing that friendship. And involved in that was a lot of betrayal, as can be understood. And as you can imagine, that cut way deeper than the betrayal of an employer, for example, because it's personal, because of the amount of your heart and soul that you put into a friendship, into those kinds of close, deep, bonded relationships in your life. And what it led me to was a space of, can I even trust myself to choose a good friend anymore? I've always been someone who connects easily with people and loves to make new friends. I really questioned it for a while, kind of stood back, took a Drake stance, no new, no new. I just got to stick with my old friends, maybe. And I realized that was just putting up a whole bunch of false defenses and not dealing with the issue. Because the issue was really what happened there? What went wrong? Let's do this post-mortem on that friendship and understand how and who I want to be moving forward. And a lot of that does involve acknowledgement of what my part in this was. What part did I play in the dissolution of that relationship? And that's a real subsuming of the ego to do that. Not easy, but integral shadow work, as we like to call it, in the slightly woo-woo world. But it really is, it's your own shadow that you're dealing with, that you are diving deeper into and interrogating to find out how to get back to the light. And I think if you don't do that work, that shadow just stays with you. It might grow, it might stay hidden, but it'll jump out when you least expect it, when you least want it to. It's my experience, and definitely my experience with my clients. So these are things to be dealt with. And as I want to really reiterate, that's not always just through professional coaching. For me, it was the dual prong of coaching and therapy that really helped me work it out. And I'll often offer that to my clients when I see they've kind of been through some kind of trauma is a big word. It's a heavy word, but really, something my mom always told me as a child that stuck with me is people feel how they feel. And if you feel like it's been traumatic for you, you need to work through it as a trauma. So if that means something like, for me, what worked, that dual prong approach of therapy and professional coaching, by all means. And, I'm not going to go down the street of all the different things that I could do. I'm just giving myself as, and that two-pronged example here as my personal way forward and solution. Not easy in any way, a lot of work. Like I said, a lot of shadow work, a lot of really looking into the recesses of who I am and how I got to be that way and what I really want. What are my values? How do I uphold those? How do I live and walk through the world in alignment with those? Because that's, for me, a very deeply held value. If you know me well, you'll know that the first big word I looked up in the dictionary, yes, the old school dictionary, children, back before Google. My kids are always like, oh my gosh, you were alive before Google? Yeah, it's a thing when you open big, fat dictionaries off the shelf to learn a word. First big word I remember learning as a really young kid was the word hypocrite, because that is such a deeply held value for me. Hypocrisy is something I'm so against. Very much into walking your talk. Authenticity. There's no other way for me. And so if I find that I'm being hypocritical, I have to interrogate that immediately. It's like a scab I've got to pick. Got, I have got to resolve that issue. And so that's why for me, shadow work is so incredibly important. It's crucial to living and walking in authenticity, to really understand who I am and how I'm behaving. So yeah, trusting myself. I mean, I think of, I travel a lot. It's another big obsession, addiction for me. I love traveling. Everyone knows me, knows that any money that is not paying my bills, probably in my younger years, money that should have been paying my bills, will be going to experiencing the world. I don't want stuff. I want to see everywhere. I want to do all the things. I'm an absolutely experiential learner and an adventurer. And that's what I invest in. So one of the biggest challenges to trusting myself in fairly recent memory was planning a trip, a family trip. Um, just, it was actually during COVID, to be fair, and everything going horridly wrong in ways that I could not have predicted or imagined as a very seasoned traveler who plans travel for fun. I literally plan tons of, birthday, anniversary, honeymoon trips for friends and family. They always say, oh, you should have a travel agency on the side. And I just love doing it. So even if it's not for myself, I love planning travel. So I take pride and joy, literally, in doing that, which is what made this particular experience so hard for me to get through and get past. So let me lay it out for you. 20, is it actually 2020? Yes, it was actually 2020. So if you go back to my earlier episode on PTG, on post traumatic growth, you'll know that 2020 was more than just the time of COVID for me. It was also when I got into my very traumatic motorcycle accident. It was June 7th, 2020. Now, my family and I had a trip planned, and like the trooper I am, I decided we're going to make it. We're going on this trip. And that trip was planned to Hawaii for the summer. I think it was the very end of summer, just before school would start in September. First time that we were ever going to go to Hawaii. Never been there before. With all the COVID rules and restrictions, travel became really delicate and very difficult. But I just saw it as a challenge that I was ready and willing to take on because I was very confident, always have been, in my ability to plan and especially to execute when it comes to travel. So where others saw, oh, it's COVID, we can't go anywhere, I saw, ooh, 29 hurdles we have to get over to get to Hawaii and actually enjoy a vacation. Bring it on. So I did all the things, booked the hotel, researched and booked the COVID tests, the clinics that we were going to do our exit tests so that we would be able to return from Hawaii, booked COVID tests through my then employer for my family to ensure that we were going to be able to travel through Pearson in Toronto, through YVR, Vancouver Airport, which was the midpoint kind of stopover on the journey, all the way into Maui. Had all of that arranged, so all the usual travel details, but all of the extra COVID details. And when I say I did that dozens of times, I'm not exaggerating. My family traveled just as much during COVID as we did otherwise, which is probably an average of about 4 times a year. So, challenge was accepted. As I said, I got all the stuff in order. All the vaccines were had. Every update, constantly watching for changing news. Because as we all know, the world was on fire and it changed daily what was required for you to travel or whether you could travel or which other document you needed. So we were flying out of Toronto on a Saturday morning. And I recall you couldn't begin it online check-in process, which required a whole lot of extra kind of immigration and documentation forms, pertaining to medical, especially around COVID things, the Thursday night. So as soon as I could, I got online, started going through the Hawaiian government, which is, of course, a very interesting thing to deal with because it was American rules, but some of them were different. Very, very, very nuanced. And so I start going through everything, and I was trying to upload the COVID test that we had just taken, showing that all 4 people in my family traveling were negative, and that we were all up to date on all of our vaccinations and such. And I found that the government site was not accepting my upload. When I phoned, and of course, phoning to find out anything about something like that, you're on the phone for at least an hour on hold. When I actually got through, I was told, oh, no, there's a very particular list of about 7, I think, places that were considered the trusted and accepted providers of COVID tests that you could only upload a test result document from one of those approved 7 advisors. Are you kidding me? So remember, this is Thursday night. We're traveling Saturday morning. So I go ahead, find somewhere, get an appointment for the next day for my whole family, which was a complete manage that by Friday evening, so less than 24 hours later, we now have 4 new negative COVID tests from an approved provider on this list of 7. So now here we are, Friday evening. It's probably around 8, 9 p.m. And I'm trying to upload these documents and it's still not working. Get on the phone for another almost 1 hour hold to get through to somebody to explain my situation and ask guidance on what to do now. And I'm told, oh no, they've actually reduced it to 3 providers. At this point, the suspicions of entire, you know, capitalist cash grabs is extremely front of mind. And so, anyway, we need to go to this other provider who happens to have a trailer. No joke, it's a trailer set up just a few blocks away from Pearson Airport. And unlike I think it was maybe $30-ish per person that I'd paid for the approved provider that we got the test from on Friday, who is no longer an approved provider, these tests, particularly because we are going to have to do them literally on Saturday morning before flying out on an early flight, would be $350 Canadian per person. So multiply that by 4. That was the only way that we were going to be allowed into Hawaii. Wow, that's a spicy meatball. But what else we can do? So go ahead and do it. Managed to get it, the appointments, literally go to Pearson, check in, say we're just going to go get our tests, we'll be back, come back, 4 more negative tests. We now have a total of 12 negative COVID tests done in the requisite amount of time, all in our possession. I've got it all laid out as we're checking in for the flights. I'd also like to just add, just for fun here, I am traveling with 2 kids and I am in a wheelchair because I've been in this motorcycle accident just 3 months before and had multiple surgeries. And I'm just starting to graduate to a point where I can use a cane from a walker. Okay. So I'm kind of, doing all this in the airport, balancing on a cane or sitting in a wheelchair. All the documents look great. They say, okay, when you get to Vancouver, you should be fine just to board there and forward on to Maui. Wonderful. I'm, of course, paranoid at this point, as you can understand, given what's been happening. So when we get to YVR, to Vancouver Airport, I go to the desk and I say, just want to triple check. You've got all the documentation. Everything is in order for our arrival in Maui. Yep, everything's in order. Wonderful. We board that plane, excitedly chattering as a family about all the things we want to do when we're in Maui. We arrive tired but excited. My wheelchair comes. I'm pushed off the plane. Of course, there's extra check desks, COVID, where documents are going to be reviewed by authorities at the Maui airport to ensure that everything's in order. Lo and behold, we are told our documents are not in order. I said, what? No. What do you mean? What could possibly be missing? Well, they had removed even those 3. Between Friday night and the time we land Saturday afternoon, the rules had changed a second time that no Canadian providers previously on that list were accepted. I tried everything. I asked, can we get a test in the airport? No, there's no testing in the airport. Is there off-airport testing like what we had near Pearson Airport in Toronto where we can pay to? No, you can't leave the airport. We went through this over and over again until I was given 2 options. Option A, we go to our hotel and remain in quarantine for the entirety of our trip, ordering food to be delivered to our door, never leaving our hotel room. Option B, we get on the next plane leaving for Canada. I just want you to picture me sitting in my wheelchair, trying my best to stay calm after all that's happened so far, trying my best to not become some stereotype of an angry Black woman, and really just peacefully articulate, we've done everything. You have a total of 12 negative COVID tests in front of you. One was done today, and nothing, no manager, no escalation would work. I spent the next hour and a half fighting with Air Canada to get onto the next flight and just barely managed to get my family ticketed before boarding closed for the next flight, taking us back through Vancouver, back to Toronto. I had my then, let me think, 2020. My 10-year-old would have been 5 years old. I had a 5-year-old son with me and a 9-year-old son with me, incredibly excited for this trip. Both of them crying, and yet both of them being good boys and saying, Mommy, are you okay? Are you in pain right now? It's going to be okay, right? Why won't they let us into Hawaii? My heart just broke. When we got on that plane, boarded that plane to return to Canada, and by this point, it's quite late on the Saturday, been traveling almost an entire day. Before takeoff, I managed to book us a beautiful Airbnb in Niagara Falls, Canada. The lovely pool and chickens living on the property, lots of things that I knew my boys would be really into. I asked each one of them, my husband included, what have you always wanted to do in Niagara Falls that you've never gotten to do? One of them said zip lining. One of them said do that Maid of the Mist and actually take the boat through the falls. And I said I always wanted to take you guys to Skyline Towers, the restaurants, revolving restaurants. You can see that. We all had something. And before that plane took off, I remember the flight attendant coming and telling me, "Oh, we've got to put all phones away now." I'm like, "Okay," because I had just finished booking every single thing that the family had asked for. We got back to Toronto on Sunday, and Monday morning we left for a trip to Niagara Falls. We made amazing family memories on that trip. We had an incredible time, and we really bonded over the fact that we made hella lemonade out of trees worth of lemons that had been thrown at us in the last maybe 72 hours. The state of my nervous system at that point, in addition to physical pain, was incredible. But it was totally, totally outdone by the pride I had in my family's resilience, the ability to just deal with it, bounce back, make lemonade, and have a great time. And yet, I can tell you, after that trip, I became really down on myself and got really paranoid, worried, scared, feeling like maybe I can't handle planning difficult trips like this anymore. Maybe I screwed up and somewhere along the line, I should have known they were going to change the rules like this. I should have. We always say in coaching, try to keep your clients from shitting all over themselves. That's what I did for months. I planned a bigger family vacation that included my parents and siblings to go back home to Jamaica for the holidays, the Christmas holidays and New Year's. The end of 2020. Did it. Pulled it off. Amazing trip. Was I scared? I was terrified. My anxiety was through the roof when we were getting on the plane. I kept waiting for the worst to happen, for someone to say, you can't get on this plane, for us to land in Jamaica and be told, nope, there's some document you don't have in order, turn around. Yeah, that's trauma. This is what I mean. For me, that was trauma. For other people, what do you mean that's trauma, Gina? But that's how my body, my psyche, my own levels of self-regulation experienced it. After Jamaica, I put a little bit more trust back in that trust bank for myself. Like, okay, this went off well. You can do this. But I'd be lying if I didn't say for the next half a dozen trips I planned that my anxiety wasn't high when I was usually a very calm, controlled, planned traveler who really trusted my own ability. What that told me, just like the accident in general told me, was we need to trust ourselves to be resilient in the face of adversity. That's way more important than trusting, hey, I've got great engineering skills. I'm an amazing teacher and I can always rely on that. Yeah, it's important to be able to rely on those hard skills, technical skills, even soft skills. But the most important one for me as a coach, as someone who's walked my life's path, is the ability to bounce back. I have a good friend, she's also a fellow coach, mentor, a good friend, Nikki, who always says to me, girl, you were made for hard things. There are some days when I want to look at her and say, oh, I just want the soft life. But at the same time, I'd be lying if I didn't say I wear that with a badge of honor. When she says that, I straighten up a little bit, feel a little bit prouder of myself. Yeah, I think I was made for hard things. Because what that statement tells me is that I can trust that I will bounce back. that I have the ability to adapt and flex, whether it's my mindset or my body, that I have the capacity to learn, to try new things, to do something a different way, to see things from a different perspective. And again, if I can't do all that, who am I to try and help clients do all that? What's that word I learned in the dictionary as a kid again? Hypocrite? Yeah, no, I'm not about that life. We're not going to let that happen. And so this is why I come back to trust being the fundamental thing. The fact that you can trust yourself to get through whatever life is going to throw at you, because the lemon, they're going to happen. They're going to get pelted at you some days. I want to, like Gina Davis in A League of Their Own styles, grab that lemon out the air and just decide what kind of lemonade I'm going to make and who I'm going to share it with today. And I think that's also a really important kind of moment for me to explain why I call this podcast what I call it. That's really a lot of how that thinking came together around having a lemonade stand. It's, yes, the place, that virtual third space where you can stop by because it's a friendly place, right? The lemonade stand. It's where you're going for refreshment. And yet it's about lemons. It's about the fact that stuff that is sour and bitter and hella unpalatable is going to come at you. It's what you do with it, what ingredients you have to add, how you know to mix it, the way you're going to pour it up. That's what really matters. Being able to trust yourself to catch that lemon and make that lemonade, that's incredibly powerful, empowering, I'd add. I have so many ways that I could go further on this. And I think having talked this long, I'll probably have to make another episode that goes even deeper on this, because there's an aspect of the alignment and the mind body connection that I think we could explore for a whole other episode on this topic here. But hey, haven't done a tarot card pull in a while, so let's dive in. Got my trusty Tarot of the Divine deck that I love to use here. Always shuffle it. Let me shuffle it so you can see it. I know people like to know that I've not planned. I'm just grabbing a card that comes out. I think we might have had this one before, funny enough. It's wild. Probably drawn a handful of cards, and there's 72 in a deck. With the chances of that? This is the card of the Ten of Swords. It's a painful looking card, is it not? You can actually make out what's on this card. You can see a person in a boat, in a canoe, and then you see all of these arrows, 10 of them to be precise, with someone who looks like they are in a lot of trouble and dying in the water, and it looks like a lot of blood going across the water. 10 of Swords is about the end of a cycle. It's literally, they're 10 swords in your back. It just can't get any worse. It's the card of rock bottom. There's nowhere to go from here but up, is the story of the Ten of Swords. And yeah, the Rider-Waite deck will show a man lying on the ground with 10 swords in his back, like dead, done, 10 times killed. It's often a card about betrayal as well. How did we draw that today? The universe, the spirit, always knows what we need. This is such an amazing deck, as I've shared before, the Tarot of the Divine, because it is inspired by folklore from around the world, like a global pantheon. And I want to actually read the accompanying guidebook's definition of this card, because I find this particular card story so intriguing. So it's a Canadian story. Ta-da! It's from Inuit mythology, story of Sedna. So the Ten of Swords represents backstabbing and betrayal. Sedna's father pushes her from his kayak and chops off her fingers when she tries to cling to his boat. She sinks to the bottom of the ocean and becomes consumed with wrath, eternally seeking revenge. So this card in its upright form represents bitterness, betrayal, rock bottom, martyrdom, severing ties. The times in my life when I've experienced intense betrayals, this card comes out a lot. What we want is to shift this card into its reversed position. Reversed, it means surviving a disaster, recovery, regeneration. If there is a card for turning lemons into lemonade, I think this is the one. Thank you. We always get the card that suits our discussion and what we need. Now, I normally close out after my tarot card pull by doing a mindfulness practice. I'm going to change it up a little bit today. I'm inspired by this topic and kind of recent events in my life to change my mindfulness moment. Today, I'm going to call it a mariner's moment. You're like, what? So let me explain. First of all, clearly I have a thing for alliterations. It's been a thing since I was a child. If I could put two words together that start with the same letter, I always will. So the Mariners are Little League baseball team and local West Hill Baseball League that my 11-year-old son plays on. Now, it just so happened that this year, this wonderful little house league team, we came together for our first match and realized there is no coach for this team. And this league runs on volunteer coaching. So every once in a while, there just aren't enough parents who step forward to volunteer to coach a team. That was the case for our team. So on that first day, we were, I'd say, very harshly pushed into a position by one of the league executives, a very rock and a hard place position. And that was either somebody steps up to coach this team, or in his words, I will write you all checks and there is no Mariners team. In other words, refund our team fees, our player fees, and bye-bye. Well, that was not going to happen. What ended up happening is myself and another awesome coach, Blaze, and another cool coach, Karen, we decided the three of us together, we can coach by committee. Takes a village. We created that village of coaches. Now, for a little bit of background, never met Blaze before that day. His daughter is on the team. This is Mara's dad. And I remember seeing his hair at some point and thinking, oh my gosh, we have such a similar hairstyle. You know, shout outs to Blaze. Got an awesome color. I don't know how he keeps it that color. It's like this wicked kind of turquoisey color. It's one of my favorites. I had it once. Couldn't last very long, but he seems to keep it consistent, very much like his coaching. So yeah, big shout out to him for that. We stepped forward and said, sure, we'll do this. And I was so grateful that Karen stepped forward right behind us and said, yeah, I got you guys too. Let's do this together. And for some background, an interesting piece of context is that the lovely friend of mine, Karen, she and I had first met, I think it was 2 years ago, when she was coaching Xavier's then team. Xavier's my son, who is then 9, and her son is also on the team, Tristan. And that was how we first got to know one another. Had lots in common, hit it off. I remember having a long conversation with Karen, probably close to a year before, where we were sitting watching the boys play. They were at a tryout for the select team in the league. And I said to her, if I were ever to coach in this league, and there was a calling for it, I mean, clearly I'm a coach, just haven't coached sports since I was a teenager. I said to her, I would coach with you because I vibed with her and I liked the way that she managed the team. And so, you know, she kind of shrugged it off, laughed it off, and said, oh, I don't think I've got it in me to do that again. And yet, at that moment, bringing us back to the beginning of this season, here she was stepping forward to say, yeah, I'll help too. So the three of us struck our coaching committee. And I said, Karen, I think I manifested this. Look at this. We didn't even know we'd be on the same team. And now here we are stepping forward and we're going to be coaching on this little committee together. Well, I have to share with you. It's been an interesting, rough year running a business called Inclusive Leadership Studio. In this particular political era we're living in has been fun. And I use that with all due sarcasm. And so with the ups and downs, a lot of pivoting, a lot of deciding, you know, what other things I'm going to do and looking for ways to not just, you know, make some bank, but also ways to fulfill myself personally. Now, coaching is a real love of mine and still coaching lots of professionals, executives, So, everything from management to C-suite clients, but there's still something missing, that would just fill my cup, fill my heart. And I found it coaching the Mariners, and I'm ever so grateful for that. I think of this team and I think of all the little personalities on it, and it's just so magical. We've got Tristan, who is Karen's son. I just said I think we manifested this experience to coach together, this amazing team that we've got. When I watch Tristan, oh my gosh, this kid has come so far in the last couple of years. What an arm. Oh, nothing more painful than when I catch one of Tristan's throws off the heel of my glove instead of in the pocket. That hurts. This kid's got a rocket. Lashes like Alvin from Alvin and the Chipmunks. So I don't know how Karen disciplines him. I tell her that all the time. We've got Chris. Oh, solid player, always willing to share his sunflower seeds with his teammates and to sit and chat deeply about his love of fishing or our mutual love of motorcycles. Such good conversations. You've got Kiara. Yeah, I see myself in this sweet, soca music loving little volleyball player who attends my old elementary school. Then there's Tyler, just a firecracker of energy who wants to get along with his teammates and who's just weekly maturing before our eyes. There's Faison. Faison's thoughtful. He's also a wonderfully talkative player. Thinks through his positions and plays and lets you in on all the inner workings of what's going on in that wonderful little brain of his. There's Nathan. Tough, hard-headed on the outside, solid player, and actually a sweet kid on the inside. There are the twins. Liam, who's just ever agreeable, super flexible, always ready to try, give it his best. You want a utility player, you want Liam. Put me anywhere, coach. I'm all good. Somebody else wants that base, that position. That's cool. I'll take the other one. And he's going to play it to his best of his ability. His brother Jaden, twin brother, still trying to tell them apart half the time. Shout outs to them. And Jaden discovered a great pitching arm mid-season. Amazing. Mara, my co-coach Blaze's daughter, quietly working hard, trying new things, new positions, new approaches, and seeing some awesome results from her deep efforts. Got Julian, small but mighty, mature, versatile player. We can count on Julian, and I really appreciate that. Got Liam L, because we got two Liams, or double L. Unofficial team captain, our skilled bet catcher, heart of gold, and always got that gleam of fun, that twinkle and sparkle in his eyes. And finally, got to shout out Xavier, my little guy, who I thank for being the optimal coach's kid for me. I tell him all the time, like his pitching skills and his leadership, they show the best of me. It's his sportsmanship and his willing to take a back seat to let others shine that really makes my heart proud and full. He knows how I feel about past experiences personally and as a parent with the coach's kid. Oftentimes they're the best player on the team with all the ego to match, or they're kind of the struggling player on the team. And he manages to really balance out being a great player who's still willing and ready to learn and still shows sportsmanship and understands when I say, no, kid, I know you got an arm, but you can't pitch today because other kids have to have a chance. Well, I say, I get it, mom, no problem. And I'm so grateful for that. I'm sharing this Mariners moment, not just because I'm so incredibly proud of these kids and what we've achieved this season. We are about to pull off first place. Woo! Go Mariners. But I also want to just share the community of parents, of grandparents, caregivers, the supporters of this team. When I say it takes a village, this is a community, not just a village, because the community can count on one another. Whether it's pitching support, whether it's batting help, whether it's ice cream sandwiches brought to practice. These parents are stepping in to coach first and third base, to step in when one of us coaches can't make it, to help in any capacity possible, to provide the most amazing scoreboard that keeps me as a coach completely organized and able to, be equitable in the way that we run our team. The fact that our kids have fun, the fact that they are allowed to choose where they want to play, and yet we are in first place. This team who had no coach at the beginning of the season, but has the most amazing community of coaches, not just the three of us, but all of the parents and supporters who come out, is remarkable. And I share my gratitude because this is, to me, an exemplification of me being able to trust myself. And I love that you've given that to me, Mariners. So, on that note, big shout out to the team. Big shout out to all of you who've come by and hopefully have gotten a little something to think about. And maybe it's put you on a path to thinking, where are you not trusting yourself right now? And how can you work towards rebuilding, regaining that trust? Because what could it bring you? What beautiful, shining results and fruits of that labor could be brought to life? So until next time, I thank you again for taking the time in this, extra long episode to stop by and sip, squeeze, and savor with style, as we always do here on the Curious Coaches Lemonade Stand. This is Dr. Gena wishing you an incredible journey, and I'll see you back in about a week's time. Until then, be well and take good care. Peace and love.